Okay, wonderful. Um, an equal pleasure to be part of this international meeting and see a lot of familiar faces. And my kudos to the conference organizers for putting together this Unlocking Digital Past. And the organizers are very prolific. There's a number of other fantastic events um, that's disseminating knowledge about the use of artificial intelligence in archives that I've been tapping into, namely Aura and Aeolian. So a little plug for some of these really interesting workshops that are taking place right now. I'm going to talk about archival appraisal and opportunities for automation with a specific case study in mind. What I'm going to focus on more specifically are ways of facilitating and automating the review of existing archival collections, be it digital or analog. I want to acknowledge some of my collaborators, Lencia Beltran, Emily Ping O'Brien. They're both University of Drexel leading fellows this fall. And with Greg Jansen, we're all working together on extending this project on Japanese American World War II incarceration camp records. All right, let me switch over here. Is my screen large enough? Can you read that? I'm not full screen, but I hopefully will work. Thank you. So a little bit of just to situate these efforts as well. I'm part of a newly created group. We're calling it a collaboratory. It's the AIC Advanced Information Collaboratory. It was specifically launched sort of um, pre-COVID or early on. No connection there, but we decided to create a virtual international vehicle to facilitate collaboration, conversations, etc. Our main focus is on exploring the opportunities and challenges of so-called disruptive technologies, which include things like computational archival science, artificial intelligence, machine learning, even digital curation. And we're looking at, which is why this is such a great fit with this event today. We're also focused on leveraging these technologies to unlock the hidden information in massive stores of records. Um, Last fall, so it's been less than a year, we also launched an initiative called FARM, which stands for the Future of Archives and Records Management. And I just wanted to share that with you briefly so that to situate this particular project. So we have a number of partnerships with cultural institutions where we're looking at the opportunities to apply AI and machine learning and automation. I list a few of them here. The first one is working with the Maryland State Archives, Chris Haley, and it's called Computational Treatments of the Legacy of Slavery. We have another collaboration with the FDR Presidential Library Collections, specifically looking at the Morgenthau Holocaust Collections Project with Kirsten Carter and Abby Gondek. As a matter of fact, another plug, there's a virtual National Archives virtual meeting mid-October to specifically look at the new forms of digital scholarship that are taking place. A third one is an AI-assisted framework for rapid conversion of descriptive photo metadata into linked data. And we're working with Holly Smith at the Spelman College, specifically looking at African American archives photographs. Really interesting work with a fabulous graduate student, Jennifer Proctor. And then finally, that's going to be my focus today, looking at computational thinking to unlock the Japanese American World War II Camp Initiative and our cultural partners, densho.org in Seattle. I thought I'd start with a really nice reference that just came out. This is from colleagues, European colleagues, Giovanni Colavisa, Tobias Blanke, Charles Jurgens, and Julia Nordgraf. If actually you're interested in this topic, I invite you to take a look at the ACM Journal on Computing and Cultural Heritage. These authors just came out with a fabulous article, which I looked at again before this meeting and felt it was useful, inspirational, on archives and AI. And it's one of the first comprehensive overviews of the current debates and perspectives that are taking place. And they reference Cal's project and a number of projects that have taken place. What they highlight in particular is the emerging gap between archivists who are familiar with AI concepts and those who may not be. Hence the necessity of retraining to mitigate the knowledge skills gap. And that's an area I will reference again before the end of the talk. In their paper, I just wanted to highlight a couple of areas that are relevant to today's seminar. Oops, I misspelled automating. I'll have to correct that. But they reference automating record-keeping processes and decisions, and specifically single out appraisal in the context of big records or big data, and also handling sensitive information such as PII, metadata extraction and identification of relationships. And the last two items are really what I'm going to focus on. So this is what our collection looks like. This was brought on a cart with wheels, but it's some 20 or so boxes with index cards that reference events in World War II Japanese American camps. The objectives of this particular study are to curate the information in these cards through analysis and extraction, which include AI processes, extract item level data, and more importantly, support withdrawal or selection decisions for working archivists. So I'll cut to the chase, kind of show you where we're at currently with some of this work, and then I'll go back and walk you through some of the details, time permitting. So on the left here, you see some of these index cards. They're cards that reference individuals or groups of individuals allegedly involved in activities in the camp. And what we're doing is going from these individual images, there's some 25,000 cards, extracting information, coming up with models to record this information, and then connecting individual cards into larger knowledge graphs. So we're sort of building, this is a graph database, actually it uses Neo4j. We're using AI as a vehicle to construct linked data archives. The idea is to improve reference through item level access, but also create a whole new universe of extracted metadata that can help locate this kind of information. So we're linking these, and to reuse a term I heard at a meeting last fall in Yad Vashem, we're in some sense building computational biographies. If you look at the chart below, here we're tracking a particular individual through time. The records related to that individual are distributed across a number of series, a number of collections, etc. So we're really integrating records into common knowledge. So what's the significance of index cards? Well, it's pretty important. I see Leslie smiling. And as a matter of fact, I went to the National Archives. This was a little while ago. And if you look at all the kinds of index cards, that was the search engine, continues to be. And just look at World War I award cards, pay cards, selective service registry, individual civilian internment cards, Philippines. These are all amazing collections at the National Archives, including International Tracing Service. We're really, what you're seeing here is tens of millions, as a matter of fact, hundreds of millions of these records. So it's a very significant source of information that's underutilized, and a really vexing problem, because if we could unlock the information contained in these kinds of resources, we would have amazing access to our historical patrimony. All right, In the 5 minutes I have left, I'm going to kind of give you a flavor of what we're doing. So um, what I'm going to, the slides I'm going to show you next, most of these can actually be accessed interactively from a platform we're standing up called CASES, Computational Archival Science Educational System. It's a Jupyter Notebook environment that allows you, in this instance, to click on citizen incarceration. It will bring up an interactive storybook with code you can use in classes or teach in cultural centers. If you go down, it's a book of books, and eventually you'll see a decision tree, and this is the selection process that is created algorithmically for the support of archivists. So there's a link, I'll come back to that, but you can really look at this and interact with it. So this is the slide static preview of this. This is part of an IMLS project. We're 1 year into it, and it's piloting a collaborative network for integrating computational thinking into library and archival education and research in practice. We're using these notebooks. There are tens of millions of them out there, but they haven't really been dragged into the cultural space. That's starting to happen with a number of cultural institutions, and that's what we're tapping into here. And of course, there's a rich historical background. They come from all these famous scientific notebooks, paper-based lab notebooks. This is what a Jupyter notebook looks like for us. We have archival practices, computational thinking practices, ethical community values considerations that are highlighted up front. Our environment should make these searchable such that in the future you could select specific archival practices, find all the notebooks that relate to these, and use these as computational references or storytelling in an educational setting. So there's a paper on this. This was done a little earlier, but we're expanding this now. This relates to this really sordid American history of rounding people up in 1942, creating a buffer zone on the West Coast and creating a network of 10 incarceration camps, including Tule Lake in Northern California. There's a picture of Tule Lake on the top left there. So we're using these cards, they're index cards to police reports, very much Stasi-like East German accusation reports with all the things that go with it. We've created this computational thinking framework, which is a set of 4 verticals with some 22 practices. And anything we do on the computational side, we try to relate to this common foundation such that we have a framework to talk about computation, AI, these kinds of things. So I'll walk you through sort of a deconstructed, in the 2 minutes I have left, I'll walk you through the deconstructed version of this and show you where AI fits in. So if you look at data practices, we take these cards, we OCR them, we run AI processes such as NER to extract metadata. I'll come back to that in just a second. We also connect these cards to other data sets. There's sort of, you see here, an individual on the card and how that individual shows up in 2 other actually National Archives stored data sets. We collect these records at scale, clean them, manipulate them. This would be an example of using OpenRefine. And all the analysis of the cards is done with AI and NER software to automatically extract metadata and look at pattern matching through recognition rules. For this particular study, we used the GATE software in the UK, analyzed these cards based on the information they have, looked at stylistics. These are things you can do with AI. You can actually classify images with AI. We didn't do too much of that. But here's an example of a card where we extract the meaning through NER and create sort of labeled categories. This is the interactive version with GATE, where you see highlighted colors identifying entities such as dates, case numbers, names, locations in the camp, organizations, all these kinds of things. What comes out of that NER AI process is an interpretation of these annotated index cards, and that's what you see here. So I'm out of time, but I just want to suggest, if you want to go and interact with this kind of work, you can look at visualizing. Let me stop my timer. You can look at things we've done with the visualization of these extracted entities, and that's all interactive. And then this is really the algorithmic part. It's harnessing the power of AI to then feed that into computational models. These were all designed with students, MLIS students, who have not been trained to this in just a few sittings. So we created a flowchart, which is a computational model, and then constructed a plain English computational model, encoded that in a computer language, and built this whole extraction selection environment for archivists at the National Archives. So I'm going to stop here, and hopefully we'll have a spirited discussion at the end of the presentations.